In the 5th century, the Huns, a nomadic people from the steppes of Central Asia, had forged an empire in the territories of modern-day Hungary. Under Rugula's rule, they had achieved success in their war against the Eastern Roman Empire and had been paid a large tribute for maintaining the peace. The Western Roman Empire maintained good relations with Rugula, using Hun mercenaries in its disputes against the Franks, Visigoths and Vandals. When Rugula died in 434, his nephews Attila and Bleda were left in charge of the empire. After several years of fighting against the Eastern Roman Empire and many other nations, they expanded their domains so that the empire spanned from Central Europe to the Black Sea. In 445, after Bleda died, Attila became the sole king of the Huns. Since then relations with Rome began to worsen. Attila forbade the Huns to fight as mercenaries and also attacked the Eastern Roman Empire again. He did not manage to conquer Constantinople, but he did achieve a new agreement to receive an even greater tribute. With the East pacified, Attila set his sights on Gaul. The reasons could be several. The Franks were at odds with each other for leadership and each of the two rivals asked for help, one from Attila and the other from Flavius Aetius, general of the army of the Western Roman Empire. The Vandals of North Africa encouraged Attila to attack the Visigoths who lived in southern Gaul, in Aquitaine, who were also enemies of the Huns. In addition, there were tensions with the Western Emperor because Honoria, sister of Emperor Valentinian, requested Attila's help after being involved in a court scandal. In the spring of the year 451, Attila and an army of 30,000 fighters between Huns and allied peoples, such as the Ostrogoths, headed west through Germanic lands. After crossing the Rhine River without encountering resistance, some towns received him friendly and those that were not were looted. Fear in the west was great given the reputation of the Huns, and Aetius began to gather an army to confront Attila, thinking that he would not be content with subduing the Visigoths, but would later attack the Roman domains. After tough negotiations, he managed to ally himself with Theodoric, king of the Visigoths, ancient enemies of Rome, to face the threat of the Huns. Together with other Germanic peoples, Franks and the Alans, they gathered an army of about 30,000 warriors. The Huns arrived at the city of Orleans and laid siege to it. A few days later they received news that the Roman army was approaching and, lifting the siege, they marched towards the plains of French Champagne, favorable terrain for the Huns cavalry. On June 20th, they arrived at these territories along the Marne River, where the allied army of the Romans already deployed was waiting for them. Attila had to destroy them if he wanted to take over Western Europe. Flavius Aetius deployed Theodoric's Visigoths on the right wing and his Roman and Germanic allied forces on the left on a hillside. In the center he placed King Sangiban's Alans to prevent his possible retreat, since he did not trust them too much. After setting up his camp near the river and placing his chariots around it as a defensive perimeter, Attila positioned himself with 15,000 Hun cavalry in the center. To the left of him the Ostrogoths commanded by Valomiro, Teodomiro and Vidomiro and the Vandal warriors. On the right the Gepid fighters with their king Arderic and other Germanic peoples. The battle began when Aetius sent a contingent of Visigoths, under the command of Thorismund, son of Theodoric, to occupy a hill located to the right of the allied army. The Ostrogoths in Attila's army rushed to prevent this by sending part of his forces. However, it was the Roman allies who achieved the objective, with the Ostrogoths having to retreat. After Attila harangued his troops, furious at this setback, the Hunnic horse archers advanced and fired their bows at the Roman army. After a couple more volleys of arrows, Attila's army charged the allies. The Huns launched a hand-to-hand attack against the Alans in the center, contrary to their usual tactic of shooting, moving and surrounding. The Ostrogoths engaged in fierce combat against the Visigoths, while on the right flank Attila's Germans and Gepids attacked Aetius. Despite Aetius' fear that the Alans might flee, this did not happen, and despite the large number of casualties inflicted by the Huns, they held their position. The Ostrogoths could not break down the lines of Theodoric and his Visigoths, who rejected them time and again. At the other end of the battle front, the Romans of Aetius and their allies resisted without much difficulty the attacks of the Gaetulians and Germans, who, charging up the hill, arrived tired and disorganized to combat. After several hours of fighting, the Alans little by little began to give ground to the Huns. Taking advantage of the gap, the Huns launched themselves against the Visigoths from the flank. Despite fighting against Huns and Ostrogoths at the same time, the Visigoths withstood the attacks. At that moment Theodoric, king of the Visigoths, fell dead. This could have been the end of the battle, but Thorismund, son of the dead king, came down from the hill he was defending along with his soldiers and attacked the Ostrogoths from the flank. This attack was decisive and the Ostrogoths were defeated and dispersed. After this movement, the Visigoths attacked the Huns with renewed forces, who had seen victory very close and now had to face the flight of their own troops. Almost at nightfall, on Aetius' flank, the Romans and their allies had managed to defeat the Gaetulians and the Germans, and they were withdrawing from the fight. Attila, seeing that he could be surrounded by Roman and Visigoth troops, fled towards his camp followed by the rest of the Huns and the surviving Ostrogoths. Somewhat later, Thorismund, new king of the Visigoths, deceived by darkness, arrived at the enemy camp when he thought he was among his allies. He was saved by his own men from being wounded and finally returned to the allied army. Aetius was confused about the outcome of the battle, and it was not until the next morning that Attila's defeat became evident. After reorganizing their forces, both Aetius and Thorismund decide what to do. The Visigoths demand revenge for the death of their king Theodoric, and it is clear that it is within their reach to destroy the Hun army. However, Flavius Aetius realizes that without the Huns, the Visigoths could once again become a major threat to the Romans and tells Thorismund to return to his lands to secure his newly acquired throne. It is possible that Thorismund came to the same conclusion, and even that he knew that the existence of the Huns would keep the Romans divided and weakened. For whatever reason, Thorismund left the Romans and Huns and returned to Toulouse along with his men. After this, Aetius let Attila escape with the rest of his troops and abandoned his loot. Nearly 30,000 bodies from both sides were left on the battlefield. Attila had lost the battle and returned to his dominions, but in the year 452 he reappeared to attack northern Italy, sacking large cities in his path. He stopped short of attacking Rome because disease was ravaging his army and because the new Eastern Emperor, Marcian, was attacking his lands in Hungary. Attila left Italy with the loot. Shortly after returning to his home, he decided to attack the Eastern Roman Empire. However, before that happened, in the year 453 he died. After his death, the Hunnic Empire began to disintegrate due to internal wars and lack of strong leadership and eventually disappeared. Although the Hunnic threat ceased to exist, this did not mean that the Romans enjoyed peace and stability. A few years later, on September 4, 476, a Herolian leader named Odoacer deposed Romulus Augustulus, the last Roman emperor, in Ravenna, an event that marked the end of the Western Roman Empire.